Moving on, for women, there is a significant angle that is beyond the concept of winning triangles. It is the choices they make. Somehow lost, right? Let's hear more about this concept in our next session. I would like to call upon our next keynote speaker, Ms. Anita Bhogle, author and consultant, for the session on Equal Yet Different Career Catalysts for the Professional Women. Joining her on stage after her keynote will be Shweta Munjal, Vice President and Global Head, Corporate Communications and Sustainability at Lupin.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Such a pleasure and privilege to be here and speaking to such a wonderful audience. So thank you, SPECTRA, and thank you, Amit. My book, Equal Yet Different, addresses the issue of why we don't have enough women leaders, and what we can do to help women stay the course and get them into leadership positions, positions of influence, decision-making roles, etc. And while it is very easy to point out to success stories like Shinjini, the truth is that overall women remain grossly unrepresented and quite invisible. So you have enough women who pass out of professional courses, enough career women to begin with, but you don't have enough women in industry fora, for example, or in any policy-making roles. So that is really where we are. I've also talked about career catalysts. Really circumstances, people, and mindsets, largely mindsets, that would help women achieve peak potential. So I sense that there are a few potential enablers over here, people who are custodians of culture in their own organizations. So I'm very happy to talk to an audience like this. I feel the DEI is a science and an art, and the science really is the policy bit, right? The art is about creating the culture of inclusion and equal opportunities. And a danda can only take you that far. So it really boils down to, having the right kind of culture and building the right kind of culture. The title, everybody tells me, is very interesting or intriguing or even appropriate. A lot of women have told me it's very appropriate, and I really believe that equal and different is the way women in careers want to be treated and need to be treated. And the term rather, equal and different, came to me many years ago, and then when I wrote the book during the pandemic, it kind of came back to me. So over the last 20 years or so, my husband Harsha and I have been doing a motivational series called The Winning Way, which is about learnings from sport for managers. And so it talks about team building and leadership and what we can learn from the champions. In 2004, we were addressing a group of senior Tata executives in Kolkata. And we finished the presentation. And at the end, Sangeeta Talwar, who was one of the senior executives, one of just 2-3 women in the audience, she walked up to me and said, I loved the presentation, but one slide in particular stood out for me. And that was a quote from Steve Waugh, who used to be captain of the Australian men's cricket team. And it said, leaders must treat their players equally yet differently. So what Steve Waugh meant was, you have the non-negotiables like integrity, hard work, discipline, which has to be equal for everybody. So whether you are a star or a young player, this is non-negotiable. But within that, given that every team consists of people who are different, come from different backgrounds, have different personalities, different motivations, some respond to pat on the shoulder, some respond to what they say, kick on the backside. So everybody is different, right? So that's what he meant, that within that, you've got to treat people differently. But Sangeeta's take was very interesting, and she said to me that this is so right for women, isn't it? And this was in 2004, way before diversity and inclusion became part of the corporate agenda. So that kind of stayed with me. Now, 18 years later, when I was promoting the book and I did this conversation on Twitter Spaces, at the end of the conversation, a young lady asked me this question. I want to do an MBA finance, but my parents say that I won't get a husband who is more qualified, and it'll be more difficult to run the home. So the suggestion was that she do something softer than finance. So she said, what should I do? And I, of course, said that, you please follow your dream, because then find a man who kind of fits into your dream, not the other way around. But, things haven't changed that much as they should have. And I don't think any man would have been asked that question. So that's where we are. Professional women also, they have proved themselves. So equal definitely on ability and ambition, having gone through the grind, qualified and done all the right things, but different in terms of their own conditioning and in terms of the challenges they face within the family, within the workplace, within society. Okay. Research has consistently shown us that, diverse companies are happier companies, more productive companies, better on customer orientation, better on employee satisfaction, better place to take decisions, and therefore also deliver better financial results. And yet you have a chart like this, and mind you, this is from Deloitte, so obviously the sample size is fairly large. And most companies, I'm anecdotally told, report similar kind of tables, if not worse. So if you notice, the starting line is pretty robust, but it kind of goes down, and that is an embarrassment, right? And I think as people who hire and manage talent, as leaders, as parents, as spouses, as colleagues, it should bother us. It should bother us a lot. Heterogeneous places are also higher on learning. If you look at the IPL, for example, it's a very popular tournament, not only for the money, but because, all players learn so much. The young, the old, and from all the countries learn so much. So, having diverse teams makes a lot of sense from every which way. It's not a CSR activity, it's not an HR initiative, it just has a good business case. And which is why we should kind of be bothered. And it's a problem that we have this problem with a significant portion of the talent pool. And unfortunately, the problem is universal. So let me give you an example that's outside of corporate life and outside of India. Again, from sport. This is my last sport example, okay? That's the hangover of the earlier work I've done. But Matthew Mott used to be a coach he is a coach in Australia, and had coached mostly male teams. Till 2018, he kind of started coaching a women's cricket team. And that team went on to win the World Cup, the T20 World Cup of 2020. And this was his observation. It's a very interesting quote. So he says, the one thing I've noticed is that if you're talking to a room full of female athletes and you say something that is quite a generic statement, every female in the room will think you are talking directly to her. Yeah, but you do the same thing in a male dressing room. The players will nod and agree and think the coach is talking about the idiot next to him. Okay, so women take feedback very personally and very seriously. And I think leaders who lead teams that are diverse and global must make note of such things. Women are different, right? But that does not make them less equal. And I think organizations need to acknowledge and understand and embrace diversity. Women are in a minority, and all minorities in any society go through this minority syndrome and the need to conform and to fit in. And some of us who are old enough will remember that women from my generation and slightly earlier started, dressing like men, speaking like men, behaving like men. And just to fit in, and I don't think that really did anything much for women in general. Now, different conditioning that women have also therefore leads to different kind of behavior. And I call this limiting behavior, and I'll tell you in a minute why I call it limiting behavior. But typically, women are short on networking. You will find that in conferences where there are few women, they will all stick to each other. They won't circulate, right? They're low on social media as well. They're not great at negotiation skills. They're not great at communication. And these are things that are investments in yourself. They also cherry pick roles. I'm talking about the average woman. They will cherry pick roles. So marketing over sales, not much P&L responsibility, easier kind of jobs. And that's because, they want predictability over challenges. So really they think about what can I manage at this stage in life, rather than what's good for my CV or what's going to be, useful from the career point of view. Now all these, if you will notice, are rooted in social conditioning and in the patriarchal kind of system, right? And it's only numbers that are going to change this, because the moment we have more numbers, our voice will be louder. And I think it will make the whole group more confident. Because as of now, it's very deep. And let me tell you another interesting story. A few weeks ago, I got a message from a woman entrepreneur, a very young woman, and she said she wanted to speak to me. So I thought it was about my work or her work, and so she did call. And she told me she had read the book and she loved it. So it started off on a good note. But then she started telling me about herself. And she said, that they were two daughters, and father was in the government, grew up in a government colony, played in a mixed group, in all mixed groups, was never discriminated against. The father taught both the daughters to ride motorcycles. And interestingly, told the daughters that you appear for the JEE first, and only if you don't get into the IIT, you appear for the CET and get into a local college, which was really quite refreshing, because most parents say, engineering karo, but go into a college that's like close by. So these parents were not only supportive, but also ambitious for their daughters. And I said, where is this conversation going? And then she kind of threw the bombshell. And she said, you talked about limiting behaviors. Help me understand. I ticked every single box. Not only that, she has a startup, an interesting startup. And when she went to pitch to VCs, her background, which was IIT, IIM, and experience in a major consultancy firm, was point number 7. And they laughed at her. And they said, you should have put it up front. This is what, we're looking for. And there are millions of stories like this, but I think you get the point. Yeah? Women display this kind of limiting behavior, but organizations also, display this kind of behavior. They think of women as secondary breadwinners. And it's easy to say, that my firm is inclusive, my family is progressive, but we wouldn't have had charts like that. So I'm talking about the average firm and, what is happening all around. Single women tell me that, so many times they're asked in interviews, why do you need so much money? As if money is an indicator and depends on, what your family size is or, how much you need. Normally women get the rough end of the stick. So if you see the pandemic, Women had a very different experience from men, more difficult, right? Even in Me Too, for example, it's the women who kind of were left shamed and unemployable, whereas the men kind of got away, the culprits got away quite easily. Even working late, for example, spoils work-life balance. Very difficult. Whether you work late or your spouse works late, it's very difficult for the woman. You know, interestingly, work-life balance is something that only women seem to be talking about. When men talk about it, it's more about hobbies and things like that. I want to do other things in life. In fact, a lot of men are afraid of talking about work-life balance because they are afraid that they'll be seen as less ambitious. You know how it is. I'm very busy, and therefore I'm very successful, and therefore I'm very ambitious. All of that. So why is this behavior limiting? If you look at all the investments, like I said, if you don't do these are all the criteria you require to be in a leadership role. And if you have not invested in them, then somewhere you become a very weak candidate when leadership roles are being considered. If you haven't done the hard yards, the difficult markets, the P&L responsibilities, you're not great at, networking, for example, you can't reach out to people, then, you're kind of disqualified as a leader. And which is why, you need to be aware of things like that. So young women who aspire to be in leadership positions must know that, they have to do what this is, the extracurricular things. Women are great at functional skills. They're great at the current job, but they are not very good at thinking about what is going to be required to get into, senior positions. Even women who get into leadership positions have to face a lot of barbs. And this is one woman talking about another. Say, she's an alpha male draped in a sari. Or they say, pointed elbows and things like that. So, like I said, the default leadership model is male. When you shut your eyes and you think driver, carpenter, leader, any of these words, it's male imagery. Yeah, that's just our unconscious bias, and it's nothing to do with men and women and whatever. All of us have grown up with the same kind of conditioning and the same kind of patriarchal system, and this is how it emerges. But because the default leadership model is male, and women need to conform, or women think they need to conform, they end up having leadership styles that are not authentic. Loud and authoritative is great for men, acceptable for men, but it's not okay for women, and so there is this struggle. And which is why I talk about us having a sisterhood. Why it is so important, because if women who have been there, done that, tell other women that, no, this is how you should do it, or this is good, or that is not good. Not in terms of ghettoization, because that's the last thing we want. We don't want to see, for men and women to be seen as different talent pools, but more in terms of a support network. And that's why I feel very strongly that, women must pay it forward. We've also grown up with a lot of mindsets to revisit, and we need to revisit some of them because we realize that some of them are outdated and detrimental to women's careers. Men need to put the food on the table. So contrary to, despite all the privileges that men have, this is something they have to live with, right? It's not everything in favor of, men. This goes against this. So whether they have abusive bosses, whether they hate their jobs, they can't quit. Women, on the other hand, quit easily, which is not great news, but I'm just saying, because whenever there's any kind of pressure at work, women seem to want to quit. Even in the pandemic, there were so many clients saying, people are leaving, what should we do? Women just can't manage it. But the mindset is more important and more scary, because I actually had a woman tell me that, my husband's salary is like bread and butter. Mine is like jam. But if you think of your income and as jam, it is dispensable, and so is your career. So at the slightest pressure, if women are going to quit, then that is not going to work out. So women also need to realize that sometimes even domestic issues are very minor, and if you only tide over these, you can't throw your whole entire career away. And research shows that this kind of support, good employers, good bosses, better support systems are bigger enablers for women than money. Money is important, it gives a sense of self-worth, but all these other things are far more important to keep women to stay the course and to make women more resilient in their careers. This is the most hard-hitting term in my book, mentally feminist. And again, there are men and there are women who are mentally feminist. But let me begin with the men. You'll find a lot of men saying, I support my wife's career. I'm very proud of the work she does. Right? But when you ask them, what are you doing to kind of share the load? Or are you prioritizing her career as well? That doesn't happen. Man gets transferred, it's the wife who's the trailing spouse. When a woman gets transferred, the man doesn't always follow. Or a lot of women refuse transfers and promotions just because they cannot, kind of inconvenience the family. Again, women. We think of ourselves as feminists. But a lot of mothers, a lot of wives are uncomfortable if, someone catches the man do household work. So beneath the surface, there is some conditioning there which says that, no, it's the woman's job and it's kind of embarrassing. So when women do work that men do, so they're working, they're driving, all these things is a step up. If a man does, work at home, it's seen as a step down, and that's a mindset that really needs to be revisited. Women have found their voice. They are into education. They are educated, they are financially independent, but unfortunately still trapped in the patriarchal mindset, and that needs to change. And if we want the needle to move faster than it is expected to move, because somebody said 30%, yesterday's paper said 30% of representation by 2058 or something like that, which is very, very slow. So if we want the needle to move, then everybody's mindsets must move little by little. Okay, so let me just give you a few easy steps, things that can be done easily within the organization. There are many more, but I just picked a few. Okay, so every policy or every initiative in an organization, whether it is networking opportunities, whether it is team building exercises, whether it's FaceTime with leaders, you need to look at it from the gender just, from the gender lens to see that it is gender just. Also, the leader drives culture, and therefore DEI should be part of the leader's KPIs. Unless that happens, it won't be taken seriously. We also need to send the right signals and encourage young fathers, new fathers to take paternity leave. Because I think having a child is a joint decision and a joint responsibility. And if the new father takes paternity leave, it just makes it that much easier for the mother to get back to work. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think you should use every forum to ask this question: why don't we have enough women? So that it remains in the collective consciousness of the organization. I remember Anand Mahindra was telling me once that when they were pushing innovation, he said, if there is a decision taken in a meeting room, the group cannot leave unless this question is asked: is there a better way to do it? So unless sometimes it's just easy to say, it's working out and this seems a convenient solution. Ask the inconvenient questions. It's only then that you will kind of, be able to push something like this. Be the change that you want. As they say, cause the effect. Which means that, you need to do something about it, and you need to be proactive. I remember S.V. Nathan of Deloitte was telling me that, people become advocates only if they make it a personal mission. And you need to do that. So I had a very interesting interview with Rishi Gaud, who was head of Sodexo. And he was telling me that he had 6 P&L units, and all of them were headed by men. And so he wanted to do something to, change that and improve the gender balance. But this question is always, we don't have enough women in the sector, right? That is the question, that's a good excuse. So what Rishi did was, he said, normally you look at competence, aptitude, attitude, and relevant experience, right, in hiring. And he said, I just diluted relevant experience and looked at other sectors which were similar. Quite like what Cadbury's did, right? When they wanted to grow the chocolate market, I mean, they realized that chocolate wasn't big enough. They said, chalo, let us get into the mithai market as well and say, kuch meetha ho jaye, right? So that's an innovative way of growing the pool. And this is what he did. And he got absolutely fabulous women. And then he had a 3-3 kind of a ratio in his P&L things and was doing really, really well. So you really need to run a DEI initiative like a change management project. Track it, measure it, and there will be some pushback. There definitely will be, because it's inconvenient, right? So, which is why you need leaders who are committed and have the conviction and the courage to run something like this, because there will be some amount of pushback. And finally, it has to be a preferred choice. DEI has to be a preferred choice, not something to comply with or feel good about, because it's very easy to do that, to just say, oh, we are doing all the right thing and whatever, and pay lip service to this whole exercise. It's only then that, things will change. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Anita, what a lovely presentation. Well, I have read the book, and it was, a signed copy from Anita. Let me tell you what is the, biggest win that I actually had from the book. Not just for me, but for young professionals in my team. So I initially ordered one book from Amazon for myself. But, even before I got the courier, I think Anita actually sent a copy over to me. I bought 6 copies for my team members, because the most beautiful part of this book is that it's actually a ready reckoner for everyone, especially young professionals, to read some insightful stories of men, women who've actually charted their career path. On that note, I think, Anita, it was just, really, really delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you. I just wanted to tell you, I read the book, and I just want to know what inspired you to write the book, and most importantly, at this point in your career, what is the big idea that you have?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is that the fact that, we don't have enough women in leadership positions has always been talked about, so that was always there at the back of the mind. And then for about 20 years, we've run The Winning Way. Yeah, like I told you. And in The Winning Way, we have a concept called the winning triangle, which is really what we say is a universal recipe for success. And we believe it's universal because regardless of, where you are, like whether you are in a corporate or whether you are in sport or whether you are in music, a combination of 3 things makes you well placed to be successful. And those 3 things are ability, attitude, and passion. So contrary to what most people think, ability most people have. It is the right attitude that you need, and when you marry the right attitude to that ability, that is when you overperform. People say underachieve or overperform.
Right.
When you marry and you have a good attitude, you make that ability look much bigger than it is. And then passion, of course. You will find that the most successful people in any profession have that kind of passion. And passion is not only about, art and films and music and things like that. You can be passionate about your product category. And I've seen enough people who are like that. So this is the kind of concept that we had. But as the number of women in the audience, grew over the years, and the women became younger and younger, meaning younger than me, I realized that, they were looking for something extra. This whole concept was not enough. Women needed something different, something extra. And then I started looking for, what that extra was. And then I realized that the choices that women make impact their careers far more. So really who you marry, whether you marry or not, whether you have children, how many you have, everything has an impact on your career other than your own career decisions. And so I thought, let me delve into this. Another interesting thing is that I think we now have a situation where we have enough women to kind of interview and learn from them. And so I thought it was a good time to write a book like that. And I spoke to a large number of women, about 90 or so, depth interviews, and that's
and men and
that's
women
the research.
both.
And of course, leaders and HR people
That's
and everybody,
right.
yeah.
Well, it's very difficult to have set of communicators and not let them communicate. So why don't we make this discussion very, very, inclusive? Let me ask this question to the audience here. Anyone, what is the definition of success for you? What is success? Anyone? Wow. Okay, a show of hands, please. Anyone, what is success to you? Okay. Can we pass on the mic, please?
Thanks. I think that success is just being able to do what you want to do, right? If you want to pursue something, you see the way, you have the support, and you achieve it. So it could be anything. But it's that you had that idea, and you were empowered to achieve it. That's just success. Whether it's a business or a course or like, oh, I want to do this fun project. You had that idea, it was your idea, and you were able to do it. That's it.
Okay, interesting. Anyone else?
I think a measure of success is if you are able to sleep peacefully at night. Because for that to happen, a lot of things have to get in line. You have to be content with what you do. Your conscience has to be clear. You have to find everything that you do very rewarding. So I think that's what success is.
Interesting. Interesting. Excellent. That side, please. It'll be great if you introduce yourself too.
Hi, Saisha Arora this side. I represent the practice. Success for me, I think, and I was also going through, your book, ma'am, just the cover page. I think definitely it's reinventing yourself to be at the right place at the right time and to be able to do that in full glory of your caliber, and to be able to make the most of where you are at that time.
Interesting. I think that's a diverse perspective. Anyone else wants to add anything? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Ritesh from Bandhan Bank. Success for me are two things. Something which makes me smile, and secondly, what I don't need to push myself, but that work or that activity pushes me to do something is for me success, that I'm able to do that.
Excellent. I think interesting, inclusive, diverse perspective. Yes. Actually, Anita, when I was reading the book, one of the areas that you mentioned was that women view success very differently. They're not chasing designations. It's beyond, their work titles, their work, etc. And in fact, in parallel, when I was reading Lean In also many years back, I realized there's imposter syndrome, which you also mentioned, which actually means that in a room full of, for a meeting, etc., if you have an idea, men, even if they're 70% sure, they will raise their hand like out loud. Whereas women, even if they're 120% sure, they will, there's a self-doubt, right? Your research, you're talking to a lot of men and women. What's your view on this?
Well, definitely there's a difference in how men and women view success. Here, of course, because we are at work, everybody's talking about, success at work.
Right.
But generally, if you look at life, at least that is what I find, that, men define their success more by professional success, and women look at a more holistic thing about having, great family, great kids doing well, as well as the career, and, so a bunch of things really. Not, their identity is not single, like, I'm a doctor, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a something. It's more to do with life in general, which is why, I feel that only women ask themselves, can we have it all?
Yeah.
The whole thing is, can we have it all, meaning can we do well at work and at home, and we want just about everything, and we want to be perfect in everything, right?
Yeah, true.
So women want to be perfect at everything, and they're very hard on themselves. This whole imposter syndrome comes from a combination of lower confidence, some amount of self-doubt, and also being hard on yourself.
Right.
I find that, and so many people say, yes, I am also hard on myself. Now, my own example also, I have gone through this. When I started writing the book and women started telling me stories, I was thinking, do I have this as well? And I do. Or at least I've had it for a long time. Now, my husband and I kind of do these presentations together, right? So we kind of speak as a pair. And when we go back to the hotel room, then we kind of say, how did it go? So let us rate the session. And given that, we did close to 600 sessions, it's a fairly large sample. Now, he would invariably rate it higher than me. And he would say, oh, wow, like, everybody loved this story, and, people were nodding for this and that and whatever. And I would invariably say, but we forgot to say this, or I was going to tell the story, and I was going to say something else. And, this was in, kind of, we should have, it was part of the brief, we forgot to say that. And he would always say that only you and I know about this, nobody else does. So why does it bother you so much? Let it be. So I've had similar experience when I play music and I do a stage kind of performance. I find that it's never 100% like it was at home. And then I say, oh, this note kind of went wrong, and I'm just an amateur. So just went wrong. And he said, beside your teacher and you, nobody would know. So it's that kind of a feeling, that imposter. Am I good enough? Am I qualified enough? Am I right for this job? That is the kind of feeling you have.
Right. I moved to a very interesting, area which I read in her book. You know it. And I'm sure when I actually introduced the term to you, you all would have heard it. It's called career intentionality. It's whether you drive your career or you let it flow, right? And I think, I'll take the opportunity to actually, mention, I've been doing communications for 2 decades now. And last 2 years, when I started working with Lupin, just around the same time, they were looking at someone to actually lead the entire ESG strategy. With both my hands up, I raised my hands and said, and by the way, this is just a new organization. December 2020, I joined them in the midst of COVID, etc. And, I haven't even been to office. I don't know anyone. I've not met them. It's all over Teams that we've met, etc. I just raised my hand and said, yes, I want to lead ESG. They just said, but I think you've just taken up this portfolio. Will you be able to take 2 portfolios, etc.? And I said, yes, I think I'll learn and, deliver. And it's been 2 years, and, there is something that has to be within you for you to drive and take your career forward. Well, this is just one of the things, in my previous avatars as well. I've actually done a lot of sales activation campaigns working with my, sales organization, etc. Well, I asked this question first to Anita, but I really want to, open the stage, open the floor to ask you guys, have you ever thought of where do you place yourself on a career intentionality scale? But before that, I think, do you want to shed some light on,
on
this?
Career intentionality.
That's right.
Sure. So it's a term that I've taken from an organization called Avatar, which does a lot of work in diversity. And I just found the whole concept very interesting. And then I did my own take on it. So I think career intentionality is about taking charge of your own career and not just letting it happen. Like I said, even in the presentation, a lot of people think about what can I manage at this stage, rather than, where is the opportunity? You know, what's going to help my career? What's the more promising thing? What's the more exciting challenge?
Yeah.
Women don't seem to think about that. So career intentionality is also about resilience.
That's right.
How important is your career in your whole life? If it's important enough, then you won't quit easily. So you need to be resilient and you need to be strong on your career intentionality so that every little problem, because finally a career is over 35, 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's like a long flight. There is going to be some amount of turbulence. If you say, at the beginning of the journey, I don't want to take this journey because there is going to be turbulence, then you're not going to go anywhere, right? So you have to learn to take it in your stride and you have to create the kind of support system that you require. So career intentionality is a score that tells you how strong you are in terms of your career.
Absolutely. So I think I opened the floor here. Is there anyone who's actually thought of, where they are on this career intentionality index? Have they actually mapped themselves out? Anyone wants to share anything? Okay. Can I just take that as one of the learnings from this room? I think this is one area that you should, everyone, irrespective of men, women, or whoever, I think it's very important for all of us to actually take charge and be resilient on, where we are in our career. Interestingly, Anita, when you speak of a lot of women actually because of various, times in their career, whether it's marriage, when they're, giving birth, etc., they take breaks, career breaks, etc. Also support their aging parents, etc. This always issue of guilt. They're always tripping on guilt. Well, I don't want to just say only women do, but yes, most women definitely do that, etc. Tripping on guilt is something which is, I don't know, it's just becoming a lot common. There is a confidence gap. There are a lot of areas that, that come in. You actually mentioned something very interesting in your book called FOMO, not at just home, but at work also. Do you want to elaborate that as well?
Sure. So the first thing I want to say is that, guilt is something that's in a woman's psyche. And I don't know a single woman who has not gone through guilt.
Yeah.
So it's not going to go away. You just need to learn to manage it. Yeah, and you need a thick skin sometimes, apart from, because the world has a way of making you feel guilty, especially when you're vulnerable. So when new mothers go back, somebody says, oh, you've left this little baby behind, how could you do it? And are you sure, how you can handle it? And, a lot of things like that. So people have a way of making you feel guilty. Even children, when they're growing up, will say, this one's mother had come for this, and that one's mother had not come, for whatever. So society has a way of doing that. You need to be sure of what you want. It's when you have that clarity in your mind, I think that helps you reduce the guilt. Also having a proper support system at home. Because at the end of the day, unless there's peace at home and you are sure that your children or parents or whoever who are your responsibility are taken care of, you can't focus on work. And so that needs to be managed. Yeah, I talked about FOMO. Correct. So, like I said, women want it all and they want to do well in everything. Now, all of that is not possible. Something will have to let go. So earlier on, women had this FOMO saying, I couldn't go for my child's sports day, or I couldn't be at home to watch my child's first steps. And, that kind of fear of missing out from the home. Now, of course, women are into careers, not just jobs. And so the careers are more demanding. You need to not only work at the workplace, but invest in yourself, do courses, travel, attend conferences like this. So it's a lot more time away from home. But it's also an investment in the career, and the career is very demanding. So there is FOMO at work as well, where you say, oh, will I miss out on, if I don't do this, will I miss out on the promotion? Will I miss out on this assignment? So earlier there was only FOMO about home, now it's FOMO about work as well, because women are doing so much more than before. It's a happy situation, but you need to manage the guilt.
Absolutely. I know we're running out of time, so last one. I'm sure we've all heard of words like allies, support groups, career sponsors, etc. Anyone, who wants to just tell me what do they understand? Who's a career sponsor for us? What is a mentor? Who's an ally? Anyone? Guys, let's make it a little more inclusive conversation. Anyone? Okay.
So I'm Nandini from Blue Ink. I think that,
Just
we
bring
should
the
share.
mic closer to
I
you.
think that we should share, so I'm happy to start, but it's not my intention to hog the mic, right? So just join in.
Can you hold the mic closer?
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, I'd like to talk about mentors, right? And career intentionality has always been something that I've done. And I knew I wanted a career. I knew what I wanted. I studied it. I pursued it. I knew what the next step was. And currently, I've taken this leap with Rajshri here to start a business, right, on content. But coming to the point of mentors, it's been my experience that it's always a bit forced. And this is not effective, right? It's been my experience that when you find a mentor, it just happens. It's somebody that, who believes in you, or it's somebody that you have something to learn from. And then by taking that jump of learning from that person who is senior or junior or somewhere in a different industry, you make that effort and then you see another path open to you. I've also been part of mentorship programs which I don't think were very effective, right? They're forced conversations. You don't have anything to share. You're paired with somebody. And it's a thing that's been made so much out of, but it's not. It's just something that you pursue. That's something that happens. So it's a matter of being open to it, I feel, looking for mentors. And those mentors become your sponsors because they are invested in you genuinely. So that's what I wanted to share.
Interesting. Anita, I want to just tell you a little bit about my story. My son's grown up. He's going to be 15 very soon. But early years, there was this, I think the head of business, who actually came to me and said, Shweta, you're a really happy-go-lucky, but, ever since you've come back from your break, which was maternity break, I see you a very different side of you. Is it, are you kind of broken between two worlds, etc.? And, I actually opened up and I told him yes. He said, you know what, just define your, he gave me the most interesting advice. For next 10 years in my career, I just decided that my home, my workplace cannot be beyond 10 kilometers so that I can reach my child when he needs me, etc. I broke off from, that mindset of I don't have to sulk in office when I'm there, and I don't have to be guilty when I'm home. Oh my God, my career is so important, etc. And I actually broke that, etc. Lot of things, as she rightly said, a very important support system. My parents they run their own business back then, so they could not come and support me. My in-laws had their own priorities, etc. I actually invested in getting a, support system, which actually meant I was paying more than what, the rates would be because I really needed it, right? So I think
it is an investment.
It is an investment,
not a cost.
Right?
Yeah.
It is absolutely. It's how you view it. Well, I want to, come to you, Anita. You've actually seen a lot of support groups. You've, with your experience, etc. Do you want to talk about any attributes that you think, men, women here should look at what a career sponsor, ally, or a mentor should be?
So I agree with the young lady there and about the mentors, but often in large organizations, you also need people who will promote your ideas. Because there are so many ideas this, and if you cannot, showcase your own work, then a person like that will help, or nudge you in the right direction, show you opportunities, and things like that. So that is really what a mentor is. In this context, I have talked about allies as well, and they are allies in terms of DEI. And so I think there are two qualities I would say that an ally would have. The first, of course, is that must believe in equality of the genders. The second thing is somebody who does something proactively.
Yeah.
So if you see any kind of bias, then you have to call out. A lot of times, for example, and this was like most evident during Me Too.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when the cases came tumbling out, a lot of men said, yeah, but everybody knew about this. What did you do?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? So, and women as well. I'm just saying, not just the men, the women as well. So, which is why I'm saying two things. That one is that, they should believe in equality, and second is do something about it. Because a lot of times women get talked over or ignored in rooms. And I have seen this happen. If a woman opens her mouth and says something, and they just ignore it, and then a man comes up and says the same thing, and they said, oh, this one said something very interesting. Hello, but somebody else said it before, and it was the same thing. So, things like that happen because women are in, there's a lot more scrutiny, there's a lot more criticism. All that goes with minority, the things you suffer because you are in a minority. But somebody who will support you and call out the bias and say, hey, somebody has something interesting to say, why don't we listen to her? Things like that, small things like that. Apart from, career guidance and things, that person would be an ally.
Superb, thank you. On that note, we'll actually close this session. Anita, it was just lovely talking to you, and thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you so much.